Hey guys, it appears as if we are about to approach that period in the NFL offseason where there's not going to be as much NFL news coming out, and whenever there's less NFL news coming out, that means there's more free time for me. So a lot of you guys know I already live stream on Twitch, but I also just released my very first gaming video on my gaming channel, Flight Plays. Now, bear in mind, this is a super old channel, so if you want to go ahead and see me do a career simulation of Trevor Lawrence on the New England Patriots, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description down below. And if you seem to like it or have any suggestions as how I can improve the content, let me know in the comment section and I'll leave a link in the description down below. But if you like it, be sure to subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's get to today's video. How do you guys feel about Marshawn Lynch as a person? Whenever you see Marshawn Lynch in the headlines, what do you think? How do you feel about him? Let me know in the comment section. I'll give you a couple seconds to do so. Okay. You guys do it? All right. Let's get to it. So, for those of you guys that don't know, Seattle is doing something that is very atypical of a franchise, and they're in negotiations to potentially bring back Marshawn Lynch for the 2020 NFL season. Now, this is why this is a little bit peculiar. They have Chris Carson and Rashad Penny on the roster, and they do have an RBC, a run back by committee. They do not feature Rashad Penny as much as you'd expect them to, considering the fact that he was a first-round pick. Chris Carson seems to be more of the workhorse in that RBC. I would know because I had Chris Carson on fantasy last year, and for the most part, Rashad Penny in 12-team leagues was left off of fantasy football rosters. But at this stage of his career, you have to understand, Marshawn Lynch is 34 years old. Now, here's the interesting thing about Marshawn Lynch being 34 years old. He retired after one of his more productive years in the NFL after the 2015 NFL season. Well, it wasn't his most productive career. I guess he was starting to slow down. The year before was very productive for him in 2014, where he made the Pro Bowl. And then in 2016, he sat out. And then he came back in 2017 to play for the Oakland Raiders because it was his hometown team. He wanted to stay with the Oakland Raiders during their final years, and then clearly he was not the player that he once was. Now, don't get me wrong, he wasn't completely unproductive. He still averaged 4.2 yards per carry, which is fairly consistent with his rushing average throughout his entire career, save for the 2012 NFL season where he averaged 5 yards per carry. But then last year, he retired, and then he unretired to come and play for Seattle after Rashad Penny and Chris Carson sustained injuries. And I just thought that was so interesting because I was thinking, of all players you go after beast mode, wasn't there some sort of animosity between Marshawn Lynch and Seattle? Why would he agree to come back to begin with? But I guess I was wrong. There was no animosity between Marshawn Lynch and the Seahawks. I always thought that there was some sort of tension between the two. Maybe some resentment because Pete Carroll opted to pass on the 2-yard line instead of giving it to Marshawn Lynch on the 2-yard line, which is a famous moment that I'm sure Pete Carroll still thinks about while he's trying to sleep every single night. And we all know what happened. It got picked off by Malcolm Butler. The Patriots won the Super Bowl, and you know, it was one of the best Super Bowls I've ever seen. It was a very exciting one at that, but I'm sure I always thought Marshawn Lynch kind of resented the Seahawks for doing that. Now, don't get me wrong. When Marshawn Lynch came back, he was really, really, really unproductive for the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, extremely unproductive. He had 67 yards on 30 carries. And bear in mind, he only played from week 17 and I guess the opening playoff games for the Seattle Seahawks. So what do you expect from a 34-year-old running back that was supposed to be retired at that point? So if that's the case, why would Seattle bother bringing him back? Why not try to hit up Adrian Peterson, who is, believe it or not, still a remarkable player. I think we need to make a video on this, by the way, because he is still averaging 4.3 yards per carry at his age 34 season. I don't think we've ever seen something like this before, but I digress. Why bring back Marshawn Lynch? Well, there's a variety of reasons, and I actually think this is a brilliant signing because on one, Marshawn isn't going to ask for a lot of money. Marshawn thought he was done after last year. You guys remember his final interview after the Seahawks lost in the playoffs. His famous interview where he said, "Protect y'all chicken," and, gave a bunch of advice to the younger players in the Seattle Seahawks locker room. When I saw this, originally, when we first got introduced to Beast Mode, I thought he was a little bit of a problem. I thought you could even go as far as to say that his personality is so eccentric that it could be a little bit of a distraction. But that's not the case at all. As a matter of fact, I think at this stage of his career, Marshawn Lynch could potentially be what the Seattle Seahawks need in order to have continuity in that franchise. You see, one of the biggest issues with Pete Carroll's system is the fact that after listening to him for a while, and this is of course according to Richard Sherman, hearing his stories and hearing his speeches really get annoying because he seems to repeat himself. And I guess you could go back to that 7 years rule that Phil Jackson has, that after 7 years of playing for one coach, you're going to stop listening to him. But there's been exceptions to that in the past, and I don't see why there can't be an exception for that now. But after seeing that interview where Marshawn Lynch took the stage, and he thought it was his final interview in the NFL, bear in mind, and of course, he was 33 years old. 33-year-old running backs, after playing in a playoff game, you're not really expected to come back. No one's going to really be seeking you if you're a 33-year-old running back. Your best years are behind you. Running backs tend to die after the age of 30 if they're lucky. And even if they're Pro Bowl running backs, even if they're transcendent talents such as Adrian Peterson, even if you did have the best year of your life after your age 30 season, which in AD season, he had 1,485 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, and 92 yards per game. Even if it's one of your most productive seasons, your team will move on from you. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah, don't get it twisted. AD tried to come back in the 2016 season. He only played 3 games and he was starting to get injured. And once he hit free agency, automatically he was seen as damaged goods. So why bring Marshawn to the Seattle Seahawks? It's very, very simple. From a schematic standpoint, the Seattle Seahawks have 2 running backs that were lost to season-ending injuries in Rashad Penny and Chris Carson. Whenever something like that happens, you really don't know how that running back is going to be once they return. Furthermore, Rashad Penny, Chris Carson, and Marshawn Lynch are all 3 very, very different running backs. And there's advantages to that. There's also great disadvantages to that. Because when Chris Carson's on the field, you know for a fact that he's not much of a threat when it comes to receiving. He's only going to be a threat whenever the ball is handed off to him. He's notorious for dropping passes and often fumbling. When Rashad Penny is on the field, you know that there's going to be some sort of gadget play for him, because Rashad Penny typically could take a 3-yard gain or a 4-yard gain or like a screen pass that's supposed to net you like 7 or 8 yards and potentially turn it into a 30-yard play. And when Marshawn Lynch is on the field, well, you know that he will be able to at least pick up 2 to 3 yards even at his age of 34. And of course, I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt because, of course, he wasn't in playing shape if he unretired to come play with the Seahawks. But even furthermore, it's not like halfback is such a huge position of need for the Seahawks. What else does Marshawn Lynch bring to the table? Well, it's very, very obvious. We saw his interview, and in that interview, he took his final moments in the NFL spotlight to give advice and mentorship to younger NFL players. He literally said, well, he didn't literally say, but I think what he was trying to say is protect yourself, protect your mental health, protect your money, don't spend frivolously. I think that's what he was trying to say when he said protect your chicken, because I really to this day don't know what protect your chicken means, because he said protect your wealth, protect your chicken. If anyone understands what the chicken is supposed to mean, I really, really would be interested in knowing. But that's what I took away from his interview. Marshawn Lynch went from being one of the most troublesome players in the NFL during his Buffalo Bills and early Seahawks days to one of the most respected and best role models in the NFL. A player that encourages each and every player to be their truest self. Think of the best version of Dennis Rodman without the problems, without the distractions. That's what Marshawn Lynch is. Yeah, he doesn't. At first, he didn't really like talking to the media, but now whenever he talks to the media, he gives you himself. He gives you his personality. He may give you a soundbite here and there. More likely than not, he will. And that's kind of how he gets over the fact that he is talking to the media. He is a remarkable role model who everyone in Seattle loves, from Pete Carroll to Russell Wilson to probably the ownership. And don't even forget the fans. He is absolutely adored in Seattle. He's not going to be requesting a huge contract. He'll be phenomenal for the development of Rashad Penny and Chris Carson. And most importantly, they have another captain, an extremely respected captain in Marshawn Lynch. I know they might not make him a captain, but unofficially, you're going to listen to Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson's voice in the Seattle locker room. Two players that have won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. So from a schematic standpoint, where the Seahawks desperately need a running back, and from a development standpoint, from a culture standpoint, Marshawn Lynch contributes greatly to the Seattle Seahawks culture. I could even potentially see a situation where Marshawn Lynch, and I know this is going to sound very ridiculous, but his eccentric style would be beautiful in this situation. I could see him even possibly getting into a consulting role and even possibly getting into a minor coaching role. Now, that might be a little controversial, but I think that much of him, I think he contributes that much to Seattle's culture. Now, I know I may have said some statements that you guys might not agree with, but I really want to get what you guys think in the comments section down below. Do you think that the Seattle Seahawks should bring Marshawn Lynch back? Do you think there's something I missed in this analysis about Marshawn Lynch? I would like to hear what you have to say. By the way, I'd like to apologize for the very, very late upload. Guys, this virus completely wrecked my sleeping schedule. I fall asleep at 6:30 a.m. and I wake up at 2:30 p.m. and I'm not proud of it whatsoever. I'm trying to fix it, and as soon as I do, we'll get back to getting uploads on both my channels at a consistent rate at a really good time. I'm your boy Mikerophone. I'll catch you guys in our next upload.